Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of the Box Jumper Podcast. I'm your host, John St. Amand. For this episode, I'm joined by two very special guests. Quinn Everett is the current reigning two-time Canadian senior men's super heavyweight Olympic weightlifting champion. He transitioned to weightlifting after a successful career as a high-level football player in both university and in the Canadian Football League. Isaac Smith is Quinn's coach. Isaac is himself a national-level competitor and provincial record holder in his weight class as a weightlifter. He's also a Catalyst Athletics Level 2 certified weightlifting coach and certified by the National Coaching Certification Program. He's past president of the Nova Scotia Weightlifting Association, an organization that he helped bring to the province to lay the foundation for organized weightlifting programs in Nova Scotia. All that is to say, both of these guys are heavyweights in their respective and now shared disciplines. I've had the pleasure of training alongside these guys for years now. Isaac has coached me many times and helped lead the Catalyst Athletics Level 1 seminar that I attended in preparation for my own certification as a weightlifting coach at Osprey Athletics. He's a gifted coach with an exacting eye and a unique style of progressing an athlete's development. Quinn is a gifted athlete himself, with an uncommon combination of power, speed, and technique that serves him extremely well as he continues to build his skill as a weightlifter in support of an Olympic ambition. They're also very generous with their time. Despite being extremely busy working together on making Quinn's goals achievable, I've had conversations with both of them off and on for the better part of a year about having them on the podcast to chat. But I've always been very careful and mindful to make sure that I try to catch them when they weren't gearing up for the next competition, which I discovered very quickly is a rare window of opportunity in their respective schedules. But thanks to COVID, and unbelievably, I can point to at least this as some good to come out of all of this. Like all of our schedules, Quinn and Isaac's training plans have been disrupted, and that afforded me an excellent opportunity to get them both on the line from their respective homes to talk about what's next for both of them. Because even with the inconveniences that come with self-isolation, their goal setting and their planning to achieve those goals hasn't taken a break. So in 10 seconds, I'll chat with the champ and his coach about the milestones they've laid out on the road to Quinn's desire to represent Canada at the Olympics in weightlifting. All right, Quinn, Isaac, welcome to the Box Jumper Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I talk to you guys at the gym all the time. I'm in the fortunate position of being in the same workout environment as you two on a daily basis, at least before this stuff was going on with COVID. But I've never really sat down and had a really detailed conversation with either of you about what your backgrounds are in sport. I know where you are now, but I'm curious to find out how you got to where you are now. So, Isaac, why don't we start with you? Because I know your background in sport and in weightlifting goes back a long ways. You're Quinn's coach. How did you get into weightlifting, CrossFit, and becoming a coach?
Okay. Well, I started in athletics at a pretty young age. I started training full or around the year in canoe kayak, and the age that they wanted you to, or was suggested, was about 13, 14 to go year round, and I was doing year round at 11.
Oh, wow.
So it got to a point of when, because where we were paddling, it was kids coaching kids. So, I was 13 being coached by 17-year-olds, and there's a few workouts where they just wanted to hang it with themselves. So they're like, Isaac, take the reins. So I kind of had my first dabble in like coaching my peers when I was about 13, 14 years old. And it's just something I always sort of resonated to. I started coaching canoe kayak when I was about 17 up to about 19, 20. At that point, I got exposed to CrossFit, and this was pretty early on. So I think this would have been about 2008, 2009. And for us at that point, doing CrossFit was throwing junk around outside of our paddling club. So It was a lot of tire flips. It was us putting junk together to turn them into barbells. It was putting junk together that, like, because we weren't in the paddling fitness center at that time, it was just us using as much scraps as we could to kind of make use of it. So I got into personal training from that point. Obviously fitness and helping others with that is always it's always been something that I kind of resonated to. It's what I'm designed for. But we were exposed to weightlifting in canoe kayak, but they're paddling coaches, so they don't really know what they're doing. So it's funny that the strongest guy, or the guy that's going to junior worlds or is on the world team circuit, is doing makeshift power clean push press at 135 pounds, and us being like 13, 14, 15, looking at that guy and being badass. Like, that guy is so cool. Like, we have like younger female athletes and male athletes on our team that are under the age of 14 that are doing power cleans at 60 kilos. And,
Right.
you know, like, depending on where you are, how well the sport is developed, there's young girls that are snatching that weight. So I guess it's all a point of being relative. Got into personal training. That led me into co-owning a CrossFit gym. And the answers that I was looking for weightlifting, I never really got. So I do the CrossFit level 1. I asked them about weightlifting, and I never really got a solid answer. And if you're looking for any sort of information on weightlifting before 2013, 2014, there was nothing. Nova Scotia didn't even have an association at this point. There is nothing to find. So over years, I took a few courses. I took a course down in the States, and there was someone there that I actually ended up rooming with at a course in the States who was training out of Cal Strength. So California Strength was one of the 2 to 3 gyms that were actually putting up social media content. So I had a conversation with him, and it was like, so how much should I weightlift? How many days? He's like, you can do it every day. And to me, coming out of like a bro science sort of mindset, or dogmatic mindset, it was like, oh, I can power clean every day if I want to. And I was extremely excited to be able to do that. Over time, I continued on taking this course, and I ended up meeting someone, or a group of weightlifters, that were really, really good at national level in the States at that time. Really good quality lifters. At this point, I was still dabbling in between CrossFit. I still resonated to weightlifting, but I was still more so a CrossFit athlete than anything. I resonated more to the strength stuff, but I did what I could to be as general as I possibly could. Mm-hmm. Ended up seeing these guys taking 5 sets of 5 on a back squat on a light day at my 1RM. And so they were going, it would be like you and Quinn doing like, okay, Quinn does a set of 5, you jump in, you do a set of 5, he does a set of 5. It was pretty well like a minute and a half rest in between. And I just watched these guys going back and forth. And then I thought to myself, I was like, I kind of want to be good at something. Like, I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I kind of want to specialize in something. So I made it a point of saying, I'm not going to go back to CrossFit until I snatch 225 pounds and I clean and jerk 275 pounds. Right. It took me 6 to 8 months to get to that point. And as soon as I started getting back to CrossFit, I felt like, okay, I'm doing this Metcon or I'm doing this conditioning, but that's going to take away from my snatching that I want to do tomorrow. So in my mind, I was already making a sacrifice. So at that point, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to specialize in weightlifting. Like, that's what I really want to do. I got some flack for it, but like, ultimately it didn't matter. I went the right way because I was able to interact with Quinn, and we have a pretty cool story if I not ramble on for so long. So I'm going to tighten this up. So I got into weightlifting training more, but I wanted people to train with. So I kind of just saw people that was training at the gym that we were out of at the time and be like, hey, how about we like do power cleans together? How about we hang snatch together? How about this? And what I really wanted to do was build training partners and build them up enough to have enough knowledge so that they could watch me. So like that's what I was trying to build on. And then over and over, it kind of ended up being from, well, yeah, you're training partners, but like you seem to have a better eye for this. So you should be the one that's coaching. That was kind of the general consensus towards what I was doing. And just to make sure that our place was, or our weightlifting community was, had some solidarity. So we weren't just a ragtag group of individuals. We started opening up a coaching class. So we opened up a coaching class. I competed at nationals. We didn't have an association at that time. So I was kind of like the makeshift president of the Nova Scotia Weightlifting Association. And then one random day, this one of the guys that was on our team brought in Quinn. So Quinn came in, thought he was a human bear. And then I think Quinn he'll tell his side of the story in a second here. We got him to jump into the workout as best as he could, stupid strong. And we were able to have a conversation with training. And a lot of the times I'm like, so far I've been telling people what to do. I've been communicating, but with Quinn, just because he has a significant experience in training, we were able to have a conversation at each other's level. So that was pretty refreshing at that point. I don't know how much further you want me to keep this going.
Well, let's jump into Quinn's story, because I think when let's build up Quinn's side of the story, and then we'll talk about where you guys intersected and where it came or where it led to from there.
Right.
So Quinn, I know you have extensive experience in sport as well. How did you get into sport even before you got into the weightlifting side of things?
So I guess I played sports like any, young kid does. My dad was a hockey dude. He put me in hockey. From hockey, I got into lacrosse. He was a baseball guy. I played baseball. I basically played every sport except for soccer because, I hate running. So, and I was always a big guy. So like, it wasn't really my thing. Just kind of played every sport I could. Loved all of them. And then I hit, puberty in my growth spurt before anyone else around me. So that made things like basketball way more fun. So going into junior high, I kind of focused on football, picked up football in like grade 7 or 8, focused on football, baseball, and basketball. Those were kind of my main 3 that I played. And the seasons kind of complemented each other too. It was hard to play football and hockey because their seasons overlapped so
right.
much, right? And then got into high school. I started weight training at in grade 10. I think I was like 14, maybe grade 9. Yeah, grade 9. I was like 14. Started weight training then with a guy named Alan Wetmore. He used to have a gym called the Ultimate Athlete Factory, specialized in
I know him actually.
Yeah. So he kind of taught me everything I knew up until I met Isaac. So he was my football coach, huge mentor for that. Played football for him for 4 years. Anyways, played football, baseball, and basketball and through high school. And then in high school, I started to kind of specialize into football, where people were telling me, hey, you could play university ball with this. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, I was just playing for fun, but this is
right,
sweet.
Yeah.
And then grade 11, 12, specialized in just football, played just football, trained year round for just football. And then I ended up getting a scholarship to Mount Allison University, where I played for 5 years. And again, I was just I didn't really have any goals at that point. I was just kind of playing football just to play football. Like, it would just kind of seemed where like, oh, I'm built for football, I should play it. Really enjoyed
Mount A has a serious program though. I mean, that's not dabbling in football.
Yeah. So when I committed, actually, they were kind of on the down curve of a program. So the year before I committed, they went 0-8. A few years before, they had like 100-point blowout by SMU. Like they were in a serious turning point of the program. And I remember picking Mount A because I wanted to be part of the guys to change the program from an 0-8 program to an 8-0 program.
Right.
I saw more value in that than just going to a school that was already like an 8-0 program or a winning program and just like adding to that. I kind of wanted to like make more of an impact on a team than just stepping in someone's shoes, you know?
Right. Yep.
So played at Mount A for a few years and then started to think, hey, you know, I want to go to the East-West All-Star game, which is basically every school sends 2 to 5 players the year before they're draft eligible to like this All-Star Bowl game. They do a combine, they play a game, and there's CFL scouts all over the place. It's basically a place to give the CFL scouts an idea of who's coming up in the next year's draft. So went there, had an absolutely horrible showing, and I thought, okay, I'm never going pro. That's fine. Did not do very well. Did okay in the combine. Just got smoked by all these guys that were way better than me, and thought, all right, well, that's fine. Like, I'll just go back and, you know, play my last few years at Mount A, whatever. It sucks, but maybe we'll get another chance. Played Mount A for my 4th year, and that was the year we actually won the AUS championship. So we started the season 1-4, and then turned it around to 4-4, and then turned it around to winning, you know, every playoff game on the road and winning the conference championship. So it was kind of like an underdog comeback story that season.
Yep.
And that got us a lot of attention. And then I had an agent message me and say, hey, like, I want to represent you in the upcoming draft, but I want you to change positions. Like, you're not gonna go pro based on like you playing defensive line, which is what I played my whole life. So he switched me to offensive line for that off season. Just learned the basics, went to a combine and did like amazing on paper. I tested really well on paper, did okay in the one-on-ones, but it was enough to kind of get on scouts' radars. So that year, that spring, I actually got drafted to Winnipeg. It was 2014. Made the team as like a reserve guy, developmental guy, learning O-line. They put me at center and guard, which, if you know anything about football, is drastically different than defensive tackle. So learned that for the summer, and then said, you know what, I want to go back to Mount A and play my last year, because, you know, I still haven't, you know, done what I set out to do. Like, we still haven't gone 8-0.
Right.
Went back, left Winnipeg, went back to Mount A that fall. Played my last year. We went 8-0, first time in school history. And we, again, won the AUS championship, but lost in the national semifinal for the second year in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So happy with my performance at Mount A. I went back to Winnipeg the following spring. So this is 2015. And Winnipeg was actually hosting the Grey Cup that year. So I was not really going to make an impact directly because I was still new, all things considering. I was going against guys that were professionals at their craft. And I was completely, you know, switching gears of a new position for about a year at this point. And I got cut during camp. I tried to get picked up by another team, and then on paper, I just looked like a guy that couldn't make the switch to the new position. And I kind of gave myself till, I think it was like week 6 or week 7 in the season of trying to get picked up by a team, because you see a lot of guys where they'll make a team and then get cut, and then the next year they'll get invited to a camp, and then they'll kind of be on the bubble. These guys ride this bubble for years. And I thought, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I either want to make it or don't, and I'm okay if I don't. Like, that,
Right. Yeah.
you know, I don't want to spend the next 8 years of my life riding this bubble and then afterwards think, well, what do I do now? So I gave myself till a certain point in the season to get picked up. That week came, never got picked up by any teams, called my agent, and he said, yeah, man, like, I've been trying to sell you, but there's no interest. So I decided to retire from football at that point. At this point, it's, you know, middle of summer 2015. And I think, okay, well, I have my marketing degree or my commerce degree. Football's over. I'm going to not be 300 pounds and lose weight and try and find a job, like get a real job.
Right.
So at that point, I start looking for a job and start just working out at Good Life, like or any commercial gym, and I absolutely hate it. Um, it's funny with training for football. I never actually wanted to admit this to myself until after football, but I'm pretty sure I liked training for football more than I actually liked football. I was kind of excited on the first week of the off season. Like that was my time.
It's more the grind that you're after.
Yeah, I liked that more than, don't get me wrong, button heads was fun, but I liked lifting weight more. So when I'm looking for this job, I struggle with the idea of like purpose, like what am I doing? What am I working to accomplish? Like, trying to find a job straight out of an undergrad is next to impossible.
It's damn hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Super difficult. No experience. I mean, I just worked in a kitchen my entire time at university. So that doesn't speak much for marketing or a commerce background. So I always knew I kind of wanted to get into strength sports after football, whether it was strongman, weightlifting, or powerlifting. I just knew that I liked training and I wanted to do it. So I kind of did some searches online in Nova Scotia, and I couldn't really find anything. And at that point, there wasn't really much around. So I thought, all right, well, whatever finds me first, I'll do. And if nothing finds me, that's cool. I was a pro athlete. That's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
So after months of basically living in my dad's basement trying to find a job, I find a job. And it's at a startup in Halifax. And I work there. I do an internship and I get a job. And after my first week, there's a guy wearing a Nova Scotia Weightlifting Association t-shirt. And I go up to him and I say, hey, like, do you weightlift? Like, do you do Olympic lifting? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, where do you do it? And he was like, oh, I do it out in Bedford in this gym with this coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, okay, can you take me? And he laughs because, I mean, football guys have are kind of like known for doing like ridiculously strong but horribly ugly power cleans. Right? So
yeah.
I'm sure if he looked at me, a football background, he would just think, no, like, don't even bother, dude. It's not your world, right? So, and then I pulled out my phone and showed him a video of my best clean at that point, which was 385. And
Jesus.
He saw it and he was like, all right, yeah. Monday, you're coming with me. So Monday comes around. And keep in mind, like, I've never really talked to this guy before. So Monday comes, he's at work. After work, we drive to this gym. And I'm saying, I'm super excited, asking him a bunch of questions, saying, okay, like, who's the coach? And he's like, oh, it's this guy named Isaac. He's awesome. You'll love him. I say, okay, great. Did you tell him that I'm coming? And he goes, no. So I was like, okay, did you like ask him if it was okay if I could come? And he's like, no. I said, okay, can you like call him right now and ask him if it's okay if I come to training today? Because I don't want to just walk in unannounced. And he's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. You'll be fine. Isaac's a great guy. He like welcomes everyone. And my thought is, okay, I am walking into a gym with a dude I barely know to meet a coach I don't know who doesn't know I'm coming and is just going to see like some football dude. I'm like, all right,
he's not wrong, but you wouldn't know that going in.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and I mean, the last thing I want to do is just like, I know coaches have plans and it's like, it can be inconvenient and annoying if someone just expects you to train them. There's a lot more that goes into a coach's day than just like telling people what to do. There's planning, there's, organization, there's, they have clients. It's a whole different world that people don't really understand. And I don't think he understood that.
For sure. Yeah.
So I show up to the gym and I see Isaac and he clearly looks unimpressed with the fact that my friend or the guy I work with brought me. So Isaac said, okay, well, we're snatching. Can you jump in? And I said, I've only ever snatched 4 or 5 times, but sure, I'll do my best. And then he quickly realized that I shouldn't be snatching at that point. And then he got me to, do some cleans. And then I remember like hang cleaning. And one of the guys on the team was like, man, he's hang cleaning like what I squat. And yeah. And then, again, I touched on this before, but I was kind of like struggling with the idea of like, what was my purpose? I kind of like devoted my life to football. And then all of a sudden football's gone. There's no more football. And I was struggling with the idea of at that point, having my quote unquote purpose be a job or like work. Because I still felt I had, more in the tank as an athlete and more that I didn't achieve yet. So, we were talking the first few days, and Isaac was like, I guess, like sizing me up, getting me to do exercise, figuring out what I could do, what I couldn't do. And at one point he looked at me and was like, "What do you want?" And I said, "I just want someone to tell me what to do." And I think as a coach, that's all you ever want in an athlete is just someone to say, "Tell me what to do and I'll do it."
Yeah.
And then that was I think like August of 2015. And we've been working together ever since. So sorry, that was kind of a little drawn out, but that's the whole gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Isaac, what was your impression the first time Quinn grabbed a barbell?
Oh, damn strong. Didn't know what he was doing, but he was damn strong. Yeah. So when Quinn's first day, I think he was hang cleaning, and there's a few people that came out of is it Widmore or Wetmore? Wetmore. There's a few people that I've worked with that came out of that gym, and they, like, kudos to this guy. Like, they knew how to power clean, to like the basic fundamentals of the movement. Everyone accomplished that. And just when Quinn came in and we kind of talked about what he wanted to do, he's like, I always wanted to clean 400 pounds. But do you remember they were a failed shoe, but the Reebok zigzags? Like back in 2014, 2015.
I've heard of them.
They're like they're like a cushiony shoe. You're basically running on pillows. So they were the worst shoe for weightlifting, but they were Quinn's only training shoe.
Yeah, I got them for free in Winnipeg, and there's no way I wasn't going to wear those to the ground. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So he was doing, and the best way that I could describe it is if, like, they're pretty close to the old white man Skechers, like, walking shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they weren't designed for weightlifting. So we talked about him working up to a 400-pound clean just because he said he wanted to do that. So we're like, okay, let's make sure that happens. So it took him about 3 to 4 months for you to get weightlifting shoes.
So actually, yeah, I think I got them in like October. So I think it was like 2 months, but it was more so me being stubborn because Wetmore basically trained us to never need an aid. So I looked at things like straps, a belt, weightlifting shoes, all as an aid. And, I shouldn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did.
So in which case, whether he was stubborn or not, or shipping took X amount of time, Quinn finally got weightlifting shoes. So we said, okay, well, let's just play around at this point. We're like, well, let's see what you can clean up to today. So he worked his way up to clean. He cleaned his PR, and then we put on 400 pounds on the bar. The first time he lifts the weight, he pulls it to about mid-thigh. And this is the only time I've ever seen Quinn not commit to a lift. He pulled the bar to mid-thigh, let it go. And then we both kind of had a dumbfounded look at each other, being like, well, what happened? He's like, it's heavy. 400 pounds, man. 400 pounds. Of course it's going to be heavy. So the next time he cleans it, he racks it on his shoulders. I think he might have sat back on his heels. His spits him out backwards. And then he was kind of like, okay, like, I know what to expect now. And then the third time he cleaned it. So we kind of made a running joke for a while, be like, hey, the shoes make the lifter. Like, you got weightlifting shoes, and like now you can clean 400 pounds is a pretty big deal.
Mm.
Yeah. So Quinn had been competing or training with us for a short period of time. We were starting to have national level qualifiers for Quinn to compete at nationals. So this is within a few months of him actually training. So we're like, okay, we got to qualify here. So the competition that he did, or I'm jumping ahead because I had a little too much coffee. Quinn could clean. He could clean the world. He didn't know how to jerk. He didn't know how to snatch. So we were basically rushing him to learn how to snatch at this point. And Quinn can clean.
Sorry if I could jump in. Part of that too is with football, it's all pushing and pulling. There's never a point where you train to put something over your head. It's all about driving your hips, getting strong legs, and front backwards, not up and down. So I'd never really put weight over my head before.
Mm-hmm. And at this time, it kind of showed. Like, he could squat the world, he could clean the world, but it was something of where, he was cleaning 200 pounds more than everyone else in the gym, but like his snatch was about 200 pounds less than what he could clean. So when he qualified for nationals, there was almost a 200-pound difference between what he snatched in that competition to what he clean and jerked in that competition.
I almost bombed out at a 110 snatch. I hit it on my third attempt, and then I hit a 180 kilo clean and jerk to hit the qualifying total for nationals, which is like, that discrepancy is unheard of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So getting him to his first nationals, and like the conversation that him and I were having is, well, we're in a rush to go to 2020. And, obviously things along the way have changed significantly, but, to him and me, it's about like, let's make a run for 2020. We can do it. There's athletes that have been able to train for 4 years and get to the Olympics because of their background. So his first nationals, he was this guy that came out of the blue, and I think Quinn will give his story on it. But his first nationals, he was this guy that came out of the blue. He actually went one of the first times, or only times, that he's gone 3 for 3 on snatching. He snatched great, but it was something of where we got up on clean and jerk, or we got to clean and jerk, and we made a stupid jump. Like Quinn will probably remember this better than I can. I think it was a 17 kilo jump.
No, that was the second nationals with that jump.
Right.
The first nationals, our goal was just a podium or come close to it. And had a good day snatching, and then only went 1 for 3 on clean and jerk. And part of it was because I wasn't used to the national level competition. Like, it's way different than a local comp, and things were starting late, and then there was time in between snatch and clean and jerk, and it just seemed like very delayed. So by the time clean and jerks came up, I was kind of mentally tired. I had started like my, we'll call it a hype up process, but I don't know if that's really what it is, too early. And, I was already hungry. I was like nervous. I, was, feeling a little mentally fatigued at that point. I didn't really know what to expect. And I missed my last 2 clean and jerks. I think the last one would have put me third.
Yeah.
But yeah, the following year is when we had that crazy jump. I don't know if we want to get into that, or Isaac, if you want to keep with your thing there.
Right. Well, the thing is with what Quinn was saying, this is the first time that we competed outside of our time zone. So he was already the last competition with a 4-hour delay, or a 4-hour time difference. Mm-hmm. So that was obviously something that, we've worked on getting used to. Like, I think Quinn will tell you about his Pan Am's prep, just because he wanted to get used to the climate, so he trained in 5 layers, but I think that story will come on later on. So the next year, we spent pretty well a year working on his snatch and working on his jerk. And that's the main focus that we had the entire time. So he went from his first nationals coming fourth. We're going into his second nationals now. And at that point, like, we thought we were in good enough place to get on the podium, maybe even win on clean and jerk. But we did some wild things at this point. And Quinn and I had always made this joke of like, I always worked with smaller athletes. And when you work with someone who's significantly different or an outlier, the variables are significantly different. So working with someone who is extremely strong, who is a lot larger, who's been training for an extended period of time, the variables of coaching him are way different than, a 14 to 16-year-old kid who weighs 110 pounds soaking wet. Right. So going into our second nationals, like, it was completely different, because we were then rushed. We were delayed on the first one. We were rushed at the second nationals. And we went from 3 to 3 on snatches to 1 to 3 on snatches. And then we had to make up ground on this clean and jerk. So we made ground on our clean and jerk. We had our first attempt in, and then it was just something where he's like, I want a podium. So I think Quinn will tell this story a little bit better than I can. But Quinn, if you want to take it away from here, you certainly
can. Sure. So something to keep in mind too is a few months out from the second national. I think it's 2017 in La Prairie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tweak my back in like, I don't know, December or January, to the point where like I can't bend over without being in pain. I can't put socks on. I can't empty the dishwasher without being in excruciating pain. Didn't really know what it was. Me and Isaac were just kind of like, we don't know what to do. So I just kind of didn't train for like a month, hoping that it would just kind of take care of itself, because that's how all my previous injuries would work. Just take time off. They work themselves out, see a massage therapist. You're good to go.
Let them heal.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. This didn't get any better. I ended up having to see a specialist guy named Warren Hefford. Has his own gym in Burnside now called Proactive. He's a sponsor. He's an awesome dude. And this guy like can fix anything, and he fixed my back. So finally, after months of, not knowing what to do and getting treatment and all this stuff, we had 6 weeks before nationals where I could actually lift a bar over my head, like comfortably and not be in pain. And we say, all right, well, let's, figure it out. We have 6 weeks, which isn't a very long time to prep for an event. So we go into the event, and the goal was to, go 2 or 3 for 3 on snatch, put us in a decent position, and then we podium and win on clean and jerk. Like put whatever we need on the bar and just make it happen. I go 1 for 3 on snatch, and my snatch is already way behind everyone else's. Like my opener was, I think, 130, and other people were opening at like 40 and 45 at that point. Mm-hmm. So after snatch, we're in the back room, and our plan was just, all right, get on the board. There's only 4 people in my weight class, so it doesn't matter if I clean and jerk, the world or just my opener. I'm still going to be 4th. So we get on the board with my opener, and then we just say, all right, next clean and jerk puts me at 3rd. So I open with 175, hit it, no problem. And then we go back in the back room and wait for 25 minutes. And I don't know why, but I was just so mad and so in the zone that I didn't want to touch a bar.
At all.
So at all. I just sat there and didn't want to be bothered and was just like, I want to lift and be put in 3rd. So we go in the back room for 25 minutes, wait out everyone else's lift. I don't do a single attempt. I don't move. At this point, I'm cold, but, that was me being dumb. So we made a 22 kilo jump, and I walk out, and everyone thinks I'm just going to deadlift it, and I clean it, and I jerk it. But I get a couple red lights, and it doesn't count. Okay. So I go out again. That was 197. I go out again at 198. We put up a kilo up just to buy some time. Keep in mind, my PR at this point is like 190. So I'm already going out at a PR attempt cold 25 minutes later. Go after 198. Again, make the clean, no problem. Miss the jerk, like press out, got some red lights. And that was it. Went 2 for 6, placed 4th. And our thought process, well, we can either just like take our 2nd and 3rd attempts at normal attempts and just like basically roll over and die and accept 4th, or we can kind of like, we're going to be 4th regardless. Right? So might as well swing for the fences. And we did, and it didn't happen, but I mean, it was still a good attempt. And it kind of like, after that, people were asking Isaac like, yo, who is this guy? Like, where'd this guy come from? But yeah, that was the second nationals that was the wild ride. Right. So basically we had 6 weeks to prepare for it leading up to it, did horrible on snatch, and then, went for a grand slam on clean and jerk.
So I guess, John, go on.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to hear just how much. I mean, I don't really want to call it strategy exactly, but how much thinking goes into what your lifts will be and how responsive you have to be to the conditions of the day and what the other lifters are putting up too.
Right. So you have to be adaptive. Like the thing that's would make weightlifting a whole lot more exciting for people to watch out in front. Obviously, seeing people snatch and clean and jerk really heavy is really exciting to see. It's entertaining. But the strategy that goes into the back room, that we're starting to see it now in international competitions. Like there's a bit more of a media following that people can see what's going on in the back room. But like Quinn and I will be lifting right beside his competitor, and then we're stacking our warm ups against what his warm ups are, and he says he's going out for 190, but he has 190 as a warm up, so he's obviously going to bump up to 195 or 200. So that changes our timing, that changes what our attempts are going to be. Like you have to be something of where you have an A and a B and a C plan, but you have to be adaptive in between those plans, just because like you want to set your athlete up for what they're capable or what they're absolutely capable of doing. So, what's going to put him in a higher place, how much rest that they need, that he needs in between sets, how many warm-up sets do we need? Do we need to wave back down and build up into it? And like, again, at this previous competition, like Quinn didn't want to take, he was going out for 197, but he didn't even want to take 100 kilos just to stay warm. Like he just sat there and vibrated because he was so angry. And then I asked him once or twice, and after the second time, I was like, all right, I'll just shut up and let him do his thing and get out of his way, because like he's obviously warm enough as it is, just being there, like furious. So I think that leads us on to year 3. I think this,
Yeah, I guess like to backtrack a bit for the back room, the best way to describe the back room in weightlifting is like one gigantic game of poker.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one huge game of poker. You don't know what people's hands are. You don't know what their plan is. You don't know what they're doing, if they're bluffing. You don't know if they're going to call up, call down. Like there's so many variables. It's one gigantic game of poker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something people don't see, but yeah, I guess leading into year 3, if we're just doing a timeline thing, like Isaac said before, we thought, okay, let's make a run at 2020. And it was kind of like, all right, this is the time where we actually show that we want to make a run for 2020 and not just place 4th 2 years in a row and be a wild card and maybe hit a lift and, maybe just be a psycho. Who knows? Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, go ahead.
What did that involve? I mean, when you after the second time placing 4th, did you change your game plan? Did your training regimen wind up changing substantially so that you would come into the next national level competition with a substantially stronger position for snatch?
Well, I think me and Isaac, we make this joke all the time. It's like he's never coached anyone really, at that level consistently, and I never competed in this sport at that level consistently. And we always make the joke that we were teaching each other how to drive standard. Like we just didn't know what we were doing, and we were just trying to figure it out along the way.
Right.
But the bare minimum is you just have to get better at snatch and clean and jerk. And how you get better at those things is doing them. Identifying weaknesses and working on those. Simple as that. And once we kind of realized that, we started to do that more and more and more. So I don't know if it really, like, obviously the exercises changed, but I don't think they changed so drastically. They were just, working on weaknesses and improvements and breaking it down like lift by lift.
So I think after year 2, and I only told Quinn this. So after year 2, because we did not accomplish it, it'd be, I thought to myself, I'm like, if Quinn doesn't win this next time, then I'm going to have to refer him out, because obviously like I'm not able, like weightlifting career, especially like when Quinn came into it after a career in football already, like it's only so long. Like every month is precious. Every year is precious. Every competition is pretty well precious at that point. And, Quinn is probably going to do his best lifts when he's 29 to 33 years old. But you have to be able to, build a foundation of, competency in the lifts and successful national and international competition. So I kind of made a deal with myself. I was like, if Quinn does not win this, like, I'm going to have to refer him out to another coach, just because, like, I obviously need to learn a whole lot more to be working with this caliber of an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did and what we changed around is, because Quinn could snatch and clean and jerk, and his snatch was really improving, but the buffer between what he can do sustainably and what he can do for an absolute weight, there's an inconsistency there. So we really worked on and had the conversation of, like, we need to build up a significant amount of volume or more volume at something that can guarantee it. And everything leading up into that point was, okay, we'll find something heavy. We'll work into a heavy lift for the day. We'll build up your maximum. But the thing that really changed, rather than building up his maximum, we'll build up his minimum underneath that. So like, he might be able to snatch 140, but if we're having days of where 20 kilos less than that, he's having a hard time doing it for a double. Like, that's a major disparity. Right. So we started incorporating just doing a bit more volume per set, probably about 10 kilos less than what he was normally working at. And initially he hated it. He wasn't a big fan of doing volume. But when we were going into year 3, like, no one at this point, there's one guy that could clean and jerk with him, but no one at this point can really stay with him on clean and jerk. We just need to make up ground on snatching.
Right.
So we're coming into this was nationals not
Richmond, Mississauga.
Yeah, it was nationals at Mississauga, and I'm going to let Quinn take over from this point.
That was 2018, right?
2018, yeah. So our game plan was basically just to beat this other guy, right? If we could beat him, we would win. Named Mike Benzik. He's been in the game for a long time. He's out west. He's also super heavyweight. He won nationals my first year competing. So he's been I guess now a long-term competitor of mine. But he's always consistently opened around the same weights. So we talked about our openers, and this was strategy. We wanted to open snatch at 141. Simple. So we figured he was going to open at 140. We open at 141. If I make 141, perfect, right? And then kind of just stay 1 kilo ahead of him on everything.
Right.
We weren't trying to set world records or anything, or Canadian records. We were just trying to beat. We were just trying to win, and you win by winning by 1 kilo.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, he opened at 141. He opened at 140. I opened at 141. We both went 1 for 3 on snatch, right? So now we're going into clean and jerk, and I'm 1 kilo ahead of him. There was other people that snatched more, but they weren't really an issue because they weren't going to clean and jerk as much as us.
Right.
So then we go into clean and jerk, and he is the first to go. And my thought is, all I have to do is just stay 1 kilo ahead of him. We're not trying to hit any number in mind. We're not trying to, make a 22 kilo jump. We're not trying to do anything. We're here to win, and that's it. So, change our game plan, change our thought. That's all it is. Baseline, whatever he does, do the same on clean and jerk, because at this point, we're 1 kilo ahead.
Yeah, very different from the year before, where you had to swing for the fences just to podium.
Exactly, right? So, whatever he called, Isaac called. And whatever he did, I did. And we just went back and forth. And then his third attempt, he took 200 and he hit it. And then I went out very last attempt and hit it. And we won by 1 kilo. He went 140, 200. And I went 141, 200. So we won finally. Third year, we finally won. And then that kind of got me some credibility and, helped get me invited to training camps and things like that. And then that summer we trained a lot, worked a lot towards the idea of going to an international meet. So this is coming up on year 4.
Yeah.
We do provincials in November as usual, and then we realize there's an international open in Vegas because they changed the way you qualify for the Olympics at this point. And at this point, we were still thinking, okay, maybe we can make it happen, but like, let's just try and be eligible, right? That was the goal at that point. It was like, okay, I don't think we're gonna go because I'm not good enough. Simple as that. But let's try and hang for as long as we can. Right? Like, let's try and go through the process and see how it happens. So I ended up going to Las Vegas in January. My first ever international competition, Team Canada, was super cool. I bomb out. Right? First time ever bombing out. I bomb out on clean and jerk, of all things. Right? I always thought if I was going to bomb out, it'd be on snatch, not on clean and jerk. But bomb out on clean and jerk, and we were hoping to use that as a Pan Am qualifier, right? So we come back from Vegas and we think, well, now what? Like, we got to go to Pan Am's. There was a qualifier in Montreal, I think 2 or 3 weeks later. So 2-3 weeks later, I'm on a plane to Montreal. I compete in just a random Montreal or Quebec Federation competition. Everyone's speaking French. I know like 2 people. A friend of ours, JP, he's a coach out of Montreal. He helped me. He called my numbers and, coached me there. But everyone was kind of looking at me like, why is this guy here? Because there was a competition the same day in Nova Scotia, but it wasn't a Pan Am qualifier.
Right.
So I had to travel to qualify, right? So go to Montreal, go in this competition, and I qualify for Pan Am's. Right. Which at this point, I think is another 3 weeks away. So
that's a lot of competing in a short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So I get back from Montreal. I'm ecstatic. And I think, okay, think back to Richmond. First time competing in a different time zone. 4-hour time change really messed me up. What's something I can do to train for Guatemala to, help my performance? And I came up with the idea of just like training in layers and layers and layers. So it was like, I don't know, it was March at this point, maybe early April.
This would have been early April, and we were competing in the end of April.
Yeah. So I'm training in my usual training gear, just like shorts and a t-shirt, but then I put sweatpants on. I tuck them into my socks, and then I'm wearing like this Under Armour cold gear that I would wear in like minus 10 degree weather when I was playing football, and then a sweater on top of that. So I am miserable. I already run warm as it is, but when I'm wearing all this, I'm super sweaty, super miserable, and super warm. And I end up hitting a snatch PR wearing all this, and like it was a really good prep for Pan Am's. And then I get to Pan Am's and I'm completely unaffected by the weather. Yeah, it's warm, but I've been training in warmer clothes for the last 3 weeks. So it actually really helped. So we get to Pan Am's. I have my best competition to date. It was great. And I finally think, all right, you know what? I deserve to be here. I deserve to be on Team Canada. This is awesome. We come back, and then nationals is, I think, again, 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later at this point. Like, it's pretty soon. Wow. I get sick coming back from Pan Am's. I catch, one of those things in the water. I probably drank coffee or something. And anyways, I get sick and I can't do anything like below parallel for a week. Right. So that hurt training. And then again, we kind of rushed training into nationals. Nationals were in La Prairie, and we go there and we win basically uncontestedly. Like I went, I think 3 for 6, right? I went and we still won by a long shot. And that's where I wanted to be by that point. So then after that, we reassess and we look at it and we say, okay, like we're still on track to be eligible, like qualify wise for 2020. Like, again, we don't think we're going to go at this point. It's like, you know what, probably not going to happen, whatever. That's cool. We wanted to, that was the goal, but maybe 24 is a better goal. Maybe we didn't realize that, how much I would need to progress or how high a level everyone else is, all the other things that you don't really know when you're trying to figure something out.
Right.
So that summer, which was last summer, actually, we had a wicked training session wicked training block. I go to a training camp in Montreal, which is great. Train all summer. We go to San Diego in October. I was originally supposed to go to Worlds in Thailand, but there was like an admin mess up, and there was a rule that really only affected my weight class because of, the winner of my weight class is the best male lifter in the world. And, anyway, so I ended up needing like a few more kilos on my total to go to Worlds, and there was no opportunity for me to get that. So couldn't go. So instead I go to San Diego, and there I actually win the international competition, but there was only 2 people in my weight class. So win that. And then that kind of brings us to the end of that year. And then the next competition was Rome, actually. And going into Rome, I didn't have the best training block. Things weren't feeling great. I popped my back again, but it wasn't really a bad one, but it was enough to hinder me. My back's kind of like an ongoing on and off thing. It'll happen once and then not again for like a year, and then it'll just happen out of nowhere. And it's one of those things that I can just go if I bend over weird, right? It's annoying. So we go into Rome, and I had an absolutely horrible prep leading up to it. And we were hoping to use this as a Pan Am qualifier because I still haven't put up a Pan Am total at this point. Mm-hmm. So we go into Rome. I'm sick, super sick. I have had the flu for a full week before I get there. We took a red eye on the way over there. Training was going bad to begin with. I was fighting some weird injury with my knees, didn't know what was going on. It hurt to bend my knee. It was just like literally everything that could have went wrong.
Right.
Competition day, I'm literally coughing up a lung into a garbage bag in the back room in between my attempts because I'm so sick. Almost bomb out and end up hitting what I need for Pan Ams. Keep in mind, the night before I was in bed with a fever, sweating it out, took 4 or 5 hot showers a day just to try and keep my temperature up, had the cold sweats, it sucked.
Right.
So we do that at Rome, and then we make the Pan Am team as an alternate, and then all this COVID stuff hits. Olympics gets postponed, Pan Am gets postponed, all this stuff gets postponed. And we're kind of thrown in this loop of, all right, now what? At this point, we already knew we weren't really a contender for 2020, but again, just wanted to go through the path as if we were, due to all the competitions we needed to do, compete at the level that we needed to do, just so we have it kind of under our belt and we kind of know what to do. There wasn't really a lot of resources for this is what you need to do. We kind of had to learn and teach ourselves. Again, we're teaching each other how to drive standard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now that puts us at this place where, can't go in the gym. It's closed. Can't, everyone's on quarantine and lockdown. So I was lucky enough to steal some equipment and from the gym, or not steal, but borrow some equipment from the gym and set up a little training thing in my garage. And that's where we're at now. Sorry, I don't know if you actually wanted the whole timeline of everything.
Oh, yeah.
I got going on it. So that's where we're at now. And I guess goal moving forward, the last couple of years was to be eligible for 2020, but not actually expect to go because I'm not good enough. And we know that. And that's okay, right? But we wanted to travel the path as if I were going. So we could see things like, oh, you get sick in Pan Ams for a week. You need to, climate train for Pan Ams. Oh, you need to be able to lift a total while having the cold sweats the night before and coughing in a lung up in a garbage can in between attempts. So
it's the exposure to all those variables that Isaac was referring to earlier that are not only different per athlete, but different per circumstance based on where you're going to compete, when you're going to compete, how it fits into your training timeline.
Exactly. And, things like time zone changes and like 4 hours seemed like a lot when we competed in Richmond, but we were working on, I don't know, it was like a 12-hour, I don't know, 8-hour time change from Rome to like, I don't actually know how much it was because we took a red eye and I honestly just didn't know what time it was half the time I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think it was 5 or 6 hours.
yeah, it was just like, oh, it's breakfast now. Okay, I guess we'll go eat. Right.
Yeah.
Like doing that stuff is it's hard to prepare for that. So it's nice that we got that exposure, and it's going to be even better in the next, 4 years when we're trying to actually go to 2024. And I think moving forward, that is the goal now.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working towards now. And it's not just being eligible; it's actually going.
I know it's early days yet, but have they announced anything about with 2020 being delayed to 2021? Do they go through an eligibility process all over again for Team Canada, or do they just go with whoever had already qualified?
Well, with weightlifting right now, there's a lot of rule changes, and there was a bit of a controversy just because our sport has been riddled with pharmaceuticals. So the current president of our international association had recently stepped down. Like no one really knows what's going on in weightlifting. Like there's a lot of hearsay of being like, sorry, gentlemen, of like, they might change the qualifying standards. The spots for this Olympics might be locked in. It might not be locked in. Like everything's still kind of up in the air. Like for Quinn and I, it's the only thing that's really going to change is Pan Am's is still going to happen. It's going to happen next year. And if someone's not able to compete next year, that bumps Quinn's spot from alternate to competing.
Right.
Unless, again, we need to put up another total, which would be great for us.
Yeah, that actually put us in a better spot than we are now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if we have to do another competition where Quinn if people have to requalify for Pan Am's, so that would be the best thing that would happen for us in terms of, now 2021, like we know it's going to happen next year. We don't know if the people that are within the criteria of qualifying, like if their spots are locked in or not.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure that hasn't been decided across a variety of sports.
Yeah.
Especially in weightlifting. I mean, just to put it bluntly, like in weightlifting, there's just a lot of shit going on. Mm-hmm. To put it very bluntly, it's no one really knows anything, especially with the whole, IWF, like change in command and things like that. They kind of have to figure out internal stuff before they figure out external stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So how has the fact that we're now all living in isolation? I mean, you've got gear in your garage, but how has this changed the training dynamic that you and Isaac as your coach have? I'm used to walking into the gym and seeing you guys working together, and you're on one platform and Isaac's bouncing around other platforms because, you're certainly not the only person that he's training at any given moment. But he's always got a watchful eye on what you're doing and giving you tips and giving you encouragement, telling you what to change. How does that dynamic work in the current circumstances?
So I've got a little platform and, squat rack and a bar and plate set up in my garage. The ceiling's a little low. I can snatch, but I have about half an inch of a clearance before I hit the ceiling when I snatch.
I can believe that, given how tall you are.
Yeah, I can't push press and I can't stand up a jerk. So I can catch a jerk in the split or the power position, but as soon as I go to like extend my legs and stand up, I hit the ceiling.
Right.
So that's really our only hindrance. We're still jerking. We're still, doing everything we can. But I just shortchange them. So I catch, receive in the split or in the power position, and then drop. Mm-hmm. And that just requires me to be really honest and disciplined with myself to say, is this a make or did I lose this? Would I lose this on the recovery?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to put like your ego aside and say, that was a make. I'll go up, or no, that wasn't a make, I have to redo that. But as far as like coaching wise, I send Isaac a lot of videos of things we're doing. So generally there's like one or two really main lifts of, Isaac, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one or two main exercises that are like the focus of the day. And then the rest of the lifts of the day kind of like either prime it or like help make it better. So there's usually like a warm up primer. So something leading up to the main lift, and then we do the main lift of the day. Maybe there's a second main lift of the day, and then the rest is kind of like a accessory cool down. So I send him the working sets generally, or the heavier sets of the main lifts. And what we've been doing on Fridays is we'll do like an Instagram live training session, or, we FaceTime this last Friday. So he's there kind of, but it's nothing like it was, in Osprey. I mean,
not always in real time, in the same way.
No,
exactly. And I mean, it's not only just the coaching, but the environment we have at Osprey is completely unbelievable. Like I wouldn't want it any other way. You can have a bad day, walk in there, and usually if you're going into training and you're having an annoying day or a bad day, or you feel tired, your training usually reflects that. But you walk in there and that kind of like gets sucked away because everyone is so like amped up and ready to go. Right.
Yeah.
Especially Isaac. Isaac, I think, gets the most amped up out of anyone in that gym by far.
yes.
So I definitely miss that aspect, but we're making it work. And I'm glad I was able to get some equipment and, borrow some equipment from the gym. So super thankful to them for that, because otherwise I would be, doing push-ups, which would suck.
Does it feel like you're still making progress towards your goals? I mean, it seems like you've both set very, very big, audacious goals, and then you're kind of reverse engineering the steps to getting there. Is that an accurate reflection of how you're progressing?
Yeah, totally. So I don't know when I learned this, but goal setting has always been a big thing in sport. You kind of pick the big thing you want to do, and then you pick, a path. Okay, how do I get there? Right. So, you pick the end goal and then you work backwards, and it's kind of the same thing as like growth in anything. There's like KPIs, or like key performance indicators. There's like goals. There's, major thresholds you pass in getting to that point. And if you're not at those checkpoints along the way, you think, okay, what am I doing wrong? How do we fix this? Maybe the goal was too audacious, so let's adjust it, things like that.
Right.
But as far as training, I still think we're on the right path. Like, I don't think my training has really been affected that much given the circumstances. I mean, other than Isaac not being around, or like us not being able to train together and not being able to be in the gym. I still train in the garage. One of our teammates, Jordan Wenzel, lives around the corner from me, so he comes over to train every day. And we still have like an environment in the garage, and training in a home gym is pretty fun, but I definitely miss the team.
It's definitely a different vibe for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's encouraging that you're still able to feel like you're still making the progress that you need to make. There would be nothing more disheartening than feeling like you're subject to limitations on your training.
Yeah. And that's one thing I was worried about with this whole COVID things and gyms being locked down. I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to borrow equipment. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now what?
Yeah.
Right. I know there's some weightlifters like of all levels that don't have a place to train. Like there's some people that are training on their balconies in apartment buildings out west.
Yeah.
You can only do so much with what you have, and people are making it work. But another thing is, we don't know how long this COVID thing is going to last. It keeps getting pushed, and then, it looks good, and then it doesn't, and then, whatever. So
it could certainly have an impact on the competitive field that you'll face in the next competition.
Exactly. So, nationals have been postponed. Pan Am's have been postponed. Olympics have been postponed. Any competition right now has been postponed.
Yeah.
And we don't know when we're going to compete next or where. I think our goal with training is just to be ready.
Right.
Yeah. So we're kind of in like a weird transitional phase of where we have to maintain his weightlifting performance, but at the same time make sure that we're building a general foundation. Just because if you lift heavy weights too much too often, it's going to beat you up.
Right.
So the program is significantly different than any of the other programs that we've done, just because it's a blend of making sure that he's able to touch up on heavy weights, but there's also other days of where like the volume has to be relatively significantly high to build a foundation under new PRs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, at least that's a strategy that worked well for you, getting him ready for the national stage.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so, backing up just, way back to the very beginning, I'm curious, what was your first weightlifting competition like, Quinn?
Just kind of a shit show. I didn't really know what to do. I didn't really know what was going on. I was one of Isaac's, I think, like 8 or 9 athletes in the competition.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever seen Isaac at a local competition, he is running around in the back room like a madman the entire day because he's got athletes in every session. He works very closely with Amanda from Hubtown. She always has like double the amount of any athletes any other coach has. So Isaac works closely with her, and we kind of like share, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the last session. I kind of got there, didn't really know what to do, didn't realize I had to weigh in. I weighed in and they asked me my weights, and I say, I don't know, man, ask Isaac. And they're like, no, you need to like declare your openers right now. And I say, well, I don't know, man, ask Isaac. He's my coach. I don't know what I'm doing. And he was like, no, I don't think you understand. You need to declare something now. So I just like picked random numbers. And then I talked to Isaac in the warm-up room, and he was like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you had to do that. Sorry. But there's so many variables that like there's so many moving parts for Isaac that like, of course, he forgot to tell me that I needed to declare numbers. Like that's just something I should have known as an athlete. Right. So the first competition, I don't even have a singlet. Locally they let you lift in like shorts and a t-shirt or, compression gear just to like kind of grow the sport a little bit. So people don't have to make this like $100 investment on a singlet just to compete once.
Right.
So I remember just warming up and missing basically every warm-up snatch that I took. This is, I don't know, like 2 months of weightlifting, 3 months of weightlifting under my belt at this point. Still couldn't really snatch anything. I was missing like 90 kilo snatches. And I remember Isaac just being like, all right, well, you're up. And you have to, I think I opened with 100, right? Or 105 or something. And he's like, all right, well, you just missed 95 like 3 times, but you got to open at 100. So good luck. So I walk out.
It didn't quite go like that, but he's not wrong.
It was basically Isaac was like, all right, well, you got to figure this out. You got to pull this out. Like you got to make it work. Like, here we go. We can't go back. This is it. So I go out and I didn't know I had to tuck my t-shirt into my shorts, but I'm about to go. And one of the referees says, Quinn, you have to tuck your t-shirt into your shorts. So I'm standing on the platform, first time ever competing, first lift, and I'm awkwardly tucking my t-shirt into my shorts as everyone watches me, which
dead
was
silent.
Just
like
dead
in
silent.
The gym, they're just watching him put his clothes on.
And I had like no idea what really to do. So I just looked at the judge and was like, is that okay? And gave a thumbs up. And he said, yes. Keep in mind, like the clock's running for my lift at this point. So I end up, somehow going 3 for 3 on snatch. Don't know how that happened, but it just did. And we get back there, or we get in the back room. We start warming up for clean and jerk. And I am exhausted. So after my first attempt at clean and jerk, I'm like huffing and puffing in the back room. Can't really, catch my breath. So we just start calling the weight up to buy me time. And end up missing the last 2 attempts. But it was like, it kind of started off as chaos, but then it ended as like, okay, this is okay. I can get used to this. Like, This is what competing is like in weightlifting. Totally different than competing in football. You kind of have to like throttle your intensity and your I guess like mental involvement. And with football, there's so many things you have to always be aware of. So things like personnel changes, you study a lot of film, watching people's tendencies. And with weightlifting, I was kind of like trying to be in that mental state. And I realized that I just need to sit back and do what Isaac tells me. That's it. I need to sit in the back room. Isaac will load the bar. He tells me when to lift. I lift it. I don't need to think about what's on the bar. I go out and lift it, and that's it. I just put my full trust in Isaac. And whatever he tells me to do, I do.
It's cool that you had that kind of experience with the first competition. I mean, I'm sure your nerves were getting the better of you to some extent, but just the idea that you settled into what that environment was going to be like so readily, I think, it could have easily scared a person off, but I think you were coming from the background that you did. You were pretty well prepared. And having a good experience in that first competition probably really set you up for what was to come.
Yeah, I figured, it was going to be different than football, but I didn't realize it was going to be so different. And obviously, like the general idea of, it being different, I saw more and more of as I competed more and more. So I don't know if it was the first competition where I said, all right, I need to let Isaac do everything. It was probably more so later in competing, but I started to realize in the first competition, okay, like I need to trust in my coach more in this sport than I did in football. I need to like fully give him, let him drive everything, right? Because football, you're told what to do a lot, right? But a lot of it is like making decisions on the field based on what you see,
right?
And there's also a set of like, okay, in this scenario, you can do X, Y, and Z. But if X happens, then you need to do A, right? There's a lot of reaction where in weightlifting, in the back room, all the reacting is the coach, playing the poker in the back room.
Right.
And the athlete, the best thing for an athlete is just to focus on lifting the bar every time, just sit there and be in your head.
Well, I mean, you guys have clearly developed a pretty strong bond of trust in going through this process. I mean, the very idea that you can just trust Isaac to tell you what you're capable of in that moment means that not only do you trust him as a coach, but you also know that he's able to read how you're feeling, what your capabilities are in that moment. Having a trusted coach in your corner at the competition to be able to work with you that closely has got to be a major part of what's able to allow you to hit these kinds of lifts. Because I mean, you're in a very small percentage of the population that would even be capable of such a thing, and to develop not only the foundation but the technical expertise to be able to do these lifts the way that you do it's really a testament to the way that you and Isaac work together.
Yeah, no, thank you. That means a lot. But I mean, don't get me wrong. There's definitely times in competition where we talk and say, "How you feeling? What do you want? Do you want to do this?" But he kind of knows that the question, if he asks me if I want to go up, the question's always yes in competing.
Yeah.
I think he kind of just asked me to like get me hyped for it, right?
Right.
But the question is, do you want to go up to like, prove a point, or do you want to go up to win? It's always yes, right?
Yeah.
But I let him make those calls, those final calls, right? And if he's asking me, I know that he wants to do it.
Yeah. With Quinn and I, like what the thing that seems to be the consistent pattern is if the communication isn't there, something goes off the rails. So like the thing with Quinn and I, like the model that we follow in terms of training is the next week or the next phase is always adjusted on the communication that him and I have.
Right.
So it's, well, how does this feel? What is this like? Is this bugging your back? Is this not bugging your back? Do you feel stronger doing this exercise? And that communication or that feedback that we get, that always leads the way of what the program is going to look like. Like if there's something that is not comfortable, he's not afraid to say like, this is not working. So then we'll make the change. And if there's any point of where, like that's not an open conversation, something bad happens.
Right.
Yeah, like it hasn't always been, sunshine and rainbows over the last, 5 years. We'll say that, but
Mhm.
we've definitely gotten to a point where we know how to communicate, what works, and obviously, like Isaac said, if we don't communicate, something usually is failing.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think what really helps that, and this speaks to Isaac's trust in me, is that he trusts that I know when I'm tired or sore versus like injured or possibly like on the verge of being injured.
Mm.
So a lot of coaches, especially in strength sports and strength conditioning, hear athletes complain about everything, anything and everything, right?
Right.
And if you're in the game for a long time, I assume you just kind of put it all into one umbrella term, like just man up and do the work, right?
Mm.
So all of a sudden you've got guys in the same umbrella that are just tired or sore, and guys that are like on verge of injury or already injured.
Mm.
So it's really nice that Isaac trusts me, knowing that I'm going to be honest if I'm, tired or fatigued and don't want to do it or am hating it versus actually being injured, right? And I also have to kind of like take a step back and think, okay, does this just suck or does this actually hurt something? Right. So there's, I guess, like discipline and being self-aware on both of our ends.
Right. Yeah.
Like I complain about stuff like no one likes snatching for sixes, especially as a 330-pound man. It's not fun. But does this suck or am I actually like getting hurt? Right. So there's that trust between us where is it actually blowing up my back or is this just hard work? Right. So it's nice that he actually trusts me to like give feedback on that and isn't just like, you know what, Quinn, just do the work, man up. Right. Because
Yeah.
I've had coaches that, will dismiss any sort of concern about injury or soreness for any athlete before. And, that's maybe just the football mentality. But like it's nice that he takes that approach and we can work together with that approach as well. Right.
Well, and having that discipline gives you the ability to have those longer term goals, because otherwise you'd constantly be adjusting for every time you wind up derailed by an unexpected injury.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we fought, a few weird unexpected injuries, like my back the odd time. My shoulder acts up from here and there, or like the odd time here and there. But now we're at the point now where we can identify if my back is weak or strong. So it seems like my back is like the weak point of, what I do. So he knows that when he takes his mind when programming, thinking, okay, well, we need to build up his back strength before we go into these heavier lifts of X, Y, and Z. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With, the thing with programming for anybody, but for Quinn specifically, is that we've had competitions of where, we tend to hit his biggest clean and jerk 14 to 10 days out. We hit his biggest snatch 10 or probably about 9 to 7 days out, just kind of depending on where the competition lies.
Mm-hmm.
But if he has something of where like, I'm not feeling it today, or my back's bugging me, or like I don't like going overhead is going to irritate my shoulder. Well, he needs to express what he's capable of doing on competition day. So there's no point of sticking to a template, but we know we have to compete in 10 days. So we've had points of where we had to hit his biggest snatch in that training cycle leading into the competition the Monday before he competes on a Saturday, because we need to be able to touch on that stimulus before that competition. Like if we dial everything down way too early, he's going to peak too soon. Or if we dial the reps down, or we do the opposite of where we just say, well, it's 10 days from competition, like you're going to be hurt when you compete, or like the adrenaline will get you through it. You're just giving someone something that they're not prepared for, which is likely going to set them up for a failure. So for me, when I program for Quinn, it's you have a plan and you plan from the competition backwards, but you have to be able to adjust the variables going forward from day to day. So if I have to get him to push, if we're supposed to go heavy on Friday, but we have to do it on the Monday before, like what that Friday workout is going to be and what that Tuesday following the heavy Monday is going to look like, and that Wednesday following, after those sessions, what that's looking like, that all changes the variables because now I have to manage his big stressor at a different point than was initially intended.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been days too. Like I remember leading up to San Diego, I was supposed to go heavy on the Friday, and I did, and it was just not a good day. And I was like, you know what, Monday, I'm retaking this day. Like I just need to retake this day and feel confident about these weights. So I just did the day over on Monday, and everything felt fine. It was a great day. I had the confidence going into the competition that Saturday, and it worked. And the fact that Isaac is okay with, hey, as an athlete, I need to feel confident in this. It really speaks a lot to his coaching ability and his, ability to, like, as a coach, put your like authority, for lack of a better term, aside and like work with someone instead of like them working for you in a way,
Right,
instead of just like telling them what to do, there's like a teamwork aspect to it.
right.
Especially when it's like one-on-one, right? With if you look at like a football team, it's totally different. You just do what coach says. But with one-on-one, I feel like it's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a remarkable amount of fine tuning that goes into it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Big time. Daily basis, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I've had you on here more than long enough. I can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time. All things considered, we may not have a hell of a lot else to do, but you both are far more dedicated to training than I am. So I'm really grateful for you taking the time to talk with me about this. I think anybody that has exposure to weightlifting, whether through CrossFit or through the weightlifting side of things, will find some nuggets of gold in there, especially talking about what your progression through your career thus far has been. But importantly, talking about the goal setting and looking to much longer term goals and grander goals and working back from there is an important process that I think everybody in sport generally winds up having to find a way to incorporate into the way that they train. Because otherwise they're just not going to make progress. You can't make up the goals on a day-to-day basis. You do have to have that longer term thinking in mind in order to give you some way to make some progress and measure it.
Totally. You got to work your way backwards, figure out where you want to be, and then figure out a path how to get there.
Well, we're certainly going to be watching your career with great interest, Quinn, even if it has been somewhat interrupted by this whole COVID thing. Hopefully things get back to normal sooner rather than later so that you're able to not only get out there on the competition stage, but return to your preferred way of training in the gym.
Totally. No, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Quinn. Thanks, Isaac.
Thanks for having us.
And that is time on this episode. I hope you liked it. All that's left is the M wrap-up. Quinn and Isaac are great guys. I feel pretty lucky to train in the same facility. They're very approachable, extremely enthusiastic about what it is that they do, and as you can tell from our chat, they're very focused on what comes next. Goal setting is an important theme that we return to often as we chatted. Each has clear visions for what they would like to accomplish, and luckily their paths crossed, and now they're both able to make great strides towards their respective and collective goals as a team. It's the unique synergy that coaches and athletes hope to achieve because that synergy helps make each of them better. If you like this episode, please share it. We fitness folks love telling other people about the latest gem we've discovered, so do me a solid, tell some other people that you think would be interested in listening to the podcast about the latest episode or maybe even one of your favorite episodes. You could also consider writing a short review or submitting a star rating on iTunes or Podchaser. It's certainly more work than telling others to listen, so I'd greatly appreciate it. If you're interested in contributing an idea for a future episode or just providing some general feedback, hit me up at info@boxjumper.ca or direct message me on social media. I'm found with the handle @boxjumperover40 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting app so you get the next episode of the podcast automatically, and join the mailing list by visiting boxjumper.ca for news, articles, and even some exclusive content. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more to come with the Box Jumper podcast. Until then, stay healthy, WOD happy, and WOD often.